Hello, welcome to SP Circuit Run, the ultimate destination for all things racing. A channel that collects various stories of motorsport to various stories.
Rin's code of perfection lies in his Suzuki DNA. It's ironic that without Suzuki's demise in MotoGP, Honda's victory drought would have continued at the America's Grand Prix. Rin's options for 2023 were limited, but a factory Honda deal to join LCR for 2 years showed HRC placed some value on his signature, even if at the beginning of the COTA weekend he was feeling somewhat like a spare part. As it happened, Rins was the only competitive Honda rider in America's. Second in qualifying, second in the sprint, and a Grand Prix win measured against Joan Mir being the next highest on the grid in 13th and in the sprint in 12th, while no other Honda rider finished the Grand Prix apart from Rins. Rins spoke of how the Honda needs more rear grip during the COTA weekend, as it really struggles under acceleration, but that he was making steady improvements in his adaptation to the RC213V. While the traction problems blighted the rest of the Honda riders at a circuit where low gear acceleration is common, Rins was riding around the problem. By all accounts, this is down to the smooth riding style he has brought with him from Suzuki. While it was thought Mir had a more suited style for the Honda, it was Rins' smoother cornering style that helped to mask the Honda's traction issues as he rolled through turns more and could carry a bit of speed out of the turns on the edge of the tire before twisting the loud lever. Perhaps now Honda will put more emphasis on Rins' development inputs.
Ducati too perfect, or Bagnaia too imperfect? Rins was strong throughout the COTA weekend, but was likely going to struggle to overhaul Bagnaia in the Grand Prix. The poleman and dominant sprint winner was hounded hard by Rins in the early stages of the main race, but the latter was having to risk a bit to stay with the Ducati. Everything looked like it was heading the way of a Grand Slam weekend for Bagnaia. And then, on lap 8 of 20 on Sunday, he crashed out going through turn 2. Marking his second Grand Prix crash in as many rounds, Bagnaia has surrendered 45 points and concedes he is lucky that most of his main rivals have struggled so far in 2023. Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi's platoon-esque dropping to his knees in despair at the sight of Bagnaia's crash said a lot about where the Italian Mark thinks Bagnaia's head is at following his spate of errors in 2022. Intriguingly, Bagnaia says the crash was 100% not my fault and blamed his bike for being too stable, which means he doesn't have any feeling front end to anticipate when it is about to fold. Bagnaia was one of 9 riders to crash out of the Grand Prix, with most pointing towards the change in wind conditions for the race and the low-grip nature of the track as the main cause. Bagnaia refuted all of these. Whatever the true cause, Ducati will have to work overtime in the coming rounds to ensure Bagnaia's confidence does not end up irreparably knocked. Radical changes needed at Yamaha to overturn skid. Yamaha's America's GP weekend was no easier than the previous 2 rounds of the championship, as the usual M1 top speed and rear traction problems continues to hinder 2021 world champion Quartararo. Quartararo was 7th in qualifying and crashed out of the sprint overriding his bike to hold onto 6th place, while the Grand Prix he was powerless to stop VR46 Ducati rider Luca Marini from taking 2nd away from him. This was still a confidence-boosting result for the Frenchman in the Grand Prix, but he didn't hold back during the weekend about where he feels the bike is at and what has to happen next. The Yamaha is the only bike on the grid that runs with an inline 4-cylinder engine, while the rest all have V4S. While the inline-4 is smaller and allows for a more agile chassis setup because of this, the V4 is the more powerful option. For a number of years, Yamaha riders have fielded questions about whether it was time to change philosophy and build a V4. Quartararo stopped short of agreeing with this, as he has no experience of a V4, but admits that, even with the apparent engine improvements that were made over the winter with the help of Luca Marini, A radical overhaul is needed for 2024. KTM potential high, but Miller doubts remain. After a rocky winter, KTM has spent the first 3 rounds showing glimpses of genuine promise with its RC16. In Texas, it looked like it was on for another strong performance in the Grand Prix when Jack Miller found himself in third. But, on lap 7 of 20, the Australian crashed out. Without that tumble, he believes he could have genuinely challenged Rins for the victory as the KTM holds its tire life better. However, for a rider who said in Argentina that he is the most doubted on the grid, an unnecessary tumble out of a top position is only highlighting that there is work to do for KTM in both improving its bike and its rider. Miller said the bike was working really decent. The one sector of the track I was feeling comfortable in was Sector 2. I was able to reel in each lap there and I was just sort of settled in, just swapped the engine maps over 2 laps prior. Felt pretty comfortable, felt those other boys were starting to come back to me a little bit. Their pace was starting to ride a little bit, the tires were getting to that point where we needed to nurse them. COTA track surface continues to cause problems. As predictable as someone equating MotoGP in Texas to rodeo riding, once again the condition of the COTA track surface was a point of contention for riders. The notoriously bumpy surface has undergone numerous part resurfacing jobs over the past few years following complaints, not just from MotoGP riders, but also from F1 and WEC. While the track received mostly positive reviews in 2022, once again the word disaster was bandied around last weekend. World champion Bagnaia took aim at the fact there are 4 different types of asphalt on the circuit, while a number of riders noted the surface appeared to be cracked in some places. In the Grand Prix, 8 riders crashed out, with a number blaming the slippery nature of the track. Some did feel the track was no worse than it was in 2022, and while there will always have to be an element of just accepting some bumps, it's clear COTA still has a lot of work to do to make its track much more suitable for MotoGP's needs.